Welcome to Got Invention Radio. I'm your host, Brian Freed, and our guest today is Michael Antino. He's the president and CEO of Merchant Media. They're a direct response TV marketer and distributor, and I'm sure you've heard of Smart Spin product, Perfect Pancake, Mr. Steamy, Bendaroos, Touch and Brush, Swivel Store, and Style Snaps. I'm sure there's plenty others, but I'll just name a couple. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me on today.
So, Michael, I gave some ideas to the inventors of what you've actually been involved with Merchant Media. Tell us a little bit about you and more in detail about your company, if you don't mind.
Well, we've been in the business for about 18 years, maybe a little bit longer. And we take inventions or products at any stage of development, and we develop them, manufacture them, market them, and bring them to the consumer marketplace. It's a multi-channel distribution strategy that really the springboard and the driving force is DRTV. It's that exposure and that advertising that drives all the other avenues of distribution, including catalog, internet, and ultimately retail, where the biggest volume is done.
Sure. So we're turning on our TV and we see the infomercial products. There's many types of companies out there. You in particular, you've had some successful products. Tell us a little bit more about what you've done in the past to make you so successful.
Well, I think, like I said, we've been in this business a long time, so we've had a lot of experience growing with the industry, which is not that old. Really it started in the late 80s for the most part, as far as what you see today, as far as DRTV being used to drive products through retail. Our experience, we learned a lot early on in the industry of what works and what doesn't work, the categories that work, the types of products that are necessary to make work, and it requires a certain amount of experience and knowledge with the creative. We've been very successful in partnering with good creative people. Our producers have done a great job. We've had long-standing relationships for 15-plus years with the majority of our producers, and that's very, very important.
Sounds like this has been pretty much the only thing that you've done, right? This is like
there was a prior incarnation of marketing and distributing electronics and computers in Russia and the former Soviet states early on, but for 18 years I've been doing this, and it's been a great ride. It's an interesting business. It's evolved tremendously over the last 10 to 15 years with the introduction of the internet and social media, and a lot of things have changed. The evolution of cable TV. All these things have affected this business that has really evolved tremendously over the past 10 or 15 years.
And I'm sure during the course of the time that you've been involved, you've been working with different inventors, and you hear different inventors that have successful stories that they've actually launched or partnered with on as seen on TV type of companies. And I know that you have a couple of products that have been successful that actually came from inventors. Wasn't the Smart Spin one of them?
The inventors are the lifeblood of this industry. There's a lot of places where we find products. Sometimes they are from existing businesses that are looking for more exposure to get their products moving along, or quite often we look back historically for products. But for the most part, inventors are the lifeblood of this business. It's what drives it. It's where we find new and innovative ideas. It's where we find people who take old ideas and make them fresh and new. We deal with inventors every day. It's where we find our stuff. It's, like I said, it's where the new and innovative stuff comes from. And,
all right.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great inventor stories, and, Smart Spin is one of them. A gentleman named Saul Palder, he was in his early 70s at the time, and, he got frustrated every time he went to go find a storage container for leftover food or whatever he needed, and he'd go into that drawer and just find a mess of storage containers and miscellaneous lids. He could never find the right lid, and, he got very frustrated with that. And, through, that frustration and, things that tend to aggravate people is where innovation is quite often found. And what he did was, he started thinking, how do I fix this problem? And basically what he thought about was a poker chip holder, which, if you could imagine, rotates and has stacks of chips in it. And he, used that as his motivation and developed a product that had standardized sized containers and a standardized lid on a swivel base. And, that was the product. And that was one of our most successful products that we had. It was a huge success.
Well, that's a great story. It's problem solution. And me personally, as I invent also, I talk about some of the frustrations that I have watching either other people do things, me personally do things, my wife, my daughter, when she was a baby, now, preteen, there's all, right?
Everybody has something in their life that aggravates them. And you know what? If it's something that tends to aggravate you very often, such as, almost every day you reach for some sort of storage container for food, those that aggravate you on a regular basis, where you're doing these particular things, often, those are where you find the real big hits. I mean, when you solve a problem that is universal, that, most people have, that's where you're going to find a big, big hit.
And that's the first step, I think, also, Michael, is when you have to be aware. You have to be aware. It's okay that you keep doing the same things over and over again, but you have to kind of just be aware that it's happening, and that's when you need to take it to the next level. And that's how an inventor really turns from idea to being an inventor, to bring it to a point where they can either license it to a company like yours, or they can decide to manufacture it and go into business and be able to commercialize it. So there's a lot of great opportunity, but the most important thing, I'm sure, is just to be focused and be aware of what's going on around you on a daily basis.
That's it. You target the problem, and then you ask yourself, is there a better way? And then you start thinking about it, and that's the beginning of innovation.
Now, an inventor comes up with an idea. There are many different ways that they can bring it to a point where they can either commercialize it on their own or license it, like I mentioned earlier. But when you're focused on attempting to connect up with a direct response TV, otherwise known as DRTV company, what sort of experience can we expect, Michael? Like, do we have to have the product really vetted out, where there's a perfect prototype and we have 5,000 units in our garage? Or can we just come to somebody like you, for example, or the DRTV world, and just give them an idea on a piece of paper?
Well, in general, I mean, I can speak, directly on our behalf and Merchant Media. You don't necessarily need any of that. It certainly is advantageous if you have a working prototype and you have done your due diligence. And, certainly if you have a patent, I mean, that would, allow us a certain level of comfort that we know that we're not violating other people's intellectual property and that it is unique. But, at the end of the day, we can develop and we can take it to the next level. So, whether or not it's an idea sketched on a cocktail napkin or it's a actual manufactured unit that is packaged and ready for sale, anywhere in that development process, we can take over. We can, if it's just an idea, we can utilize, either our engineers or our product designers that we work with, or even our factories in the Far East, to take it from whatever stage it's in to the next stage.
Okay.
Clearly, a working prototype is, it helps with evaluation. I mean, it helps to, prove that the product will actually function and work as we plan. But, if we see something that we believe is just a great idea, well, that has a lot of value as well. And we believe that, we can figure those things out from there. It's a much longer process. It's a lot more risk on our end to determine whether or not that is a viable product. Everything from function to cost to, like I said, do we violate other people's intellectual property? Are there patents on parts of that, on the whole, on the actual thing? There's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done. And clearly, it is much better if the inventor has done all that for us and has a working prototype that we can test, that we can put in the hands of consumers, or we can put in the hands of our creative people or producers, and really get a feel for what we can do, and the demonstrations and the problems it's going to solve. But anywhere in that process, we can take that to the next level.
Okay. I have to say that there's many inventors that when they come up with that idea, they want somebody just to take off and run with it. Is it necessary? I know that you said you have all the due diligence, but when inventors do a simple search online and they just look through the first page of Google or Google Images, for example, and they don't see anything, or they just go to Walmart and they look for their idea and it's not out there, do you feel like that's good enough, or do you want us to have a professional patent search done by one of those firms, or to go to a patent attorney and have them vet out the idea? I mean, it sounds to me like people can throw you ideas all day long without doing their research. How do you feel about that?
You know what? Obviously we clearly prefer that you or the inventor does their research. Just throwing out an idea is not a good situation. And it's for the inventor as well. I mean, the inventor needs to do some work. I mean, they need to do their due diligence. They need to make sure that the product doesn't exist. They need to make sure, and there's a lot of places you have to look. You can't just look the first page of Google. I mean, you need to look on eBay and see, has it been done in the past? I mean, eBay is a great resource for finding old products. And, you can look up vintage slicer, for instance, and find out,
resource.
What old slicers have been done. And that's part of, the product development research, but that's also part of the intellectual property research.
Absolutely.
You have to go beyond the first page of Google. You need to do a quick search yourself on the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office website. Clearly, if you have taken it to the next level and you can get that intellectual property, whether it's a design or a utility patent, that is very, very helpful, and that puts the inventor further along the development process. And generally, I mean, if you have intellectual property that we can utilize, or gives us some ammunition to protect ourselves in the marketplace and also protect ourselves from violating other people's intellectual property, well, that will have an effect on what the royalties that will be and what can be paid.
Okay.
That's all part of the risk that we take. And if we have intellectual property that minimizes the risk and solidifies our position in the marketplace against copycats and knockoffs, then that is a better position for us, and it ends up being a better position for the inventor.
I have to say, Michael, there was an inventor that I was helping along, and he had a great product, and he brought it to a point where there was a company that was interested in his idea. And when I spoke to him about what he did with protecting it or just going through the patent search and everything else, he said he did a search and he filed a provisional patent, which is basically a placeholder for when you're going to file your non-provisional patent, and it gives you the right for 1 year to call your product or your idea patent pending. So he had the product, he presented it, they were very interested in it, going back and forth, moving right along. The company ended up doing their due diligence. They found the same exact product that was already patented. And they asked him, "Is this you?" And he said, "No." Well, it's already out there. And that was a real heartbreaker for him. And for the other company, they were like, well, it's already out there. It's already somebody's intellectual property. Next. And, for the inventor going through all those stages and even filing the provisional patent without really focusing on step one, I think just from an emotional standpoint and also from time and money that you spend, I think it's important to really focus on that first stage, no matter who you're bringing it to. It's great that you do that, Michael, and I know other companies do that as well, but really to save your own emotional attachment to your idea and the time and money and energy and effort